What's up, Team Diadem? We're back here at our studio in Pompano Beach, Florida for another episode of Courtside Sessions, the podcast for junior players, parents, and coaches. Today, we're joined by a special guest, one of our On the Rise campaign pro players. He's a top 200 ATP player, Oliver Crawford. How are you feeling today, Oliver?
Very good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm pretty pumped that we were able to get you in the studio, do a whole day of shooting. As you know, you're coming into the brand, one of our new players. How's that going for you?
Yeah, it's been great. Just obviously got here this morning and having a great time meeting everyone and getting familiar with the brand and everything like that. The racket's been great thus far, and I'm looking forward to hopefully a good year.
I love that. And then part of this whole podcast is really designed to give value to junior players, parents, and coaches. So it's grass court season, and that means we're going to hook you guys up with two of our favorite tennis products, 20% off. That's right, our rackets and our string, all 20% off on diademsports.com when you use code GRASS. That's GRASS. You can get an Elevate V3 like the one that Oliver Crawford will use this weekend in London. You can get reels of our Evolution, our Flash, or any of our string for 20% off. And you can get our Nova V3s, the most explosive power in the game, for 20% off when you go to diademsports.com and use code GRASS, GRASS. I'm going to go order mine right now, actually. Actually, I forgot. I'm not going to get this Nova V3, even though it's my favorite racket. I'm going to get the Nova FS, because if you go on diademsports.com right now, it's 50% off. That's right, 50, using code CSSFS. That's right, go to diademsports.com and get the Nova FS using code CSSFS for 50% off right now. I think let's start at the beginning and learn a little bit about how you got into playing tennis.
Yeah, so I was telling them earlier, I picked up a racket, I guess, when I was 2 years old. I guess the long story is I was in primary school growing up, and I was always hitting an eraser with a pencil, and the teachers were like, what is he doing? And basically I just wanted to always hit things. So my mom took me to the local the country club we lived in, and she started asking the teaching pro if he could give me a lesson or two, and he says, I'm not going to change a diaper, and it took a bit of convincing, and finally he said yes. So yeah, I started from when I was 2 years old, and then played till I was about 13, but it kind of became on the back burner just because all the team sports came first, and you had team practices and things, and I would play twice a week from probably 2 to 12 or 13, and then my coach, my tennis coach, said you can try and be really good at one or just be average at all of them. And so I said, okay, give me a couple weeks to think about it. And I went back and talked to my parents and everyone. And I said, okay, I want to do tennis, and I'm going to give up the rest of them to see if I can make a career out of it. And then, started training pretty hard from there on out. And I guess at around 15 years old, I linked up with Kelly Jones at Furman University. Obviously a very sought out after coach, very, very good. Kind of molded me into the player today and really helped me kind of establish my game style and things like that. And yeah, I did a really good first Kalamazoo, I guess, when I was 15, and then the USTA picked me up, and I was able to play, with them. I was traveling around with them, playing all the ITFs, and managed to play all the majors and, crack the top 10 in the world in the juniors. And from there, it was a decision to either go to college or play professionally, and Kelly was adamant on me going to college to develop my game more and mature physically, mentally, and everything. And so, went to University of Florida for a few years. He was very keen on Brian Shelton.
Yeah, before we talk about that transition to the college level, let's look back to that time when you were around 13 and you decided to go tennis full time. What was it about tennis compared to those team sports that really kind of caught your focus and made you want to do that?
I think playing, an individual sport is awesome. I think because it's, you can go as far as you want to go. It's up to you at the pace you go and what you do. And, I think with the team sports, they're awesome. I love being a part of a team. I think it's just, tougher to, practice, train hard. There's always someone else you have to be, using or with or whatever. And I think with the tennis, it also, was probably would fit my skill set better per se. I probably wasn't going to be an NFL running back and maybe not a, NBA point guard. So it was probably better I chose tennis in the long run. But no, I think the competitive side and being, the individuality of the sport, and I also love to travel and love to see the world and things. And I love that it's an international sport and played on a bunch of different parts of the world. So, I think that was probably, those were the main reasons why I decided on tennis.
Totally. And then you mentioned a pretty deep run in Kalamazoo when you were 15. And from that time when you transitioned full-time tennis when you were 13 to making big national runs when you're 15, what does that kind of like 2-year gap look like for you?
Yeah, more or less a lot of training. I was playing a decent amount of tournaments, but I feel that for me in my development, it was always developing in conquering stages of the tennis. So at the beginning stage, I was playing the state level, then I was playing the southern level, and then I was playing the national and international. I think, a lot of times players try and skip levels and things like that. And I think that's, to me, is where you can start, have a sporadic result here and there, but I think until you learn to beat players you should beat, you'll never be able to consistently win tournaments and improve your ranking and improve, the longevity of your career. So I think I even translate that into the pros as playing, a lot of futures before I went to the challenger level, and I'll play a lot of challengers before I go to the ATP level because I think that's, more or less the way to develop your game. And, if you can learn to win uncomfortable matches against people you should beat and while working on things you're supposed to work on with your tennis, I think that's, for me, the best way to improve.
Yeah, I think that's a great approach that I've seen talking to a lot of high-performing tennis players later in their career is when they were those foundational juniors, it wasn't really about the tournaments. It was about making sure their tennis and their game was improving every day. And then it turned into playing at those national tournaments and finding success there.
Yeah, for sure.
What was that like, kind of traveling to your first big national tournament? Where did you feel a lot of pressure? Was it fun for you? What was that like as a junior?
Yeah, I think for me is always embracing the moment and embracing the opportunity and stuff. So, I have, vivid memories of walking into Kalamazoo and, you're used to playing, small state, southern, not even national level tournaments where there's only a few people there. It's, small courts. There's not, many people around, whatever. And you then go and then, there's the Riley Opelkas, the Noah Rubins, the Tommy Pauls, the, Michael Moes and the Francis Tiafos of the world there. And those are more or less your idols at that stage because they're the people you looked up to and you've watched do really well at the high level junior stuff and even had some success at the small level pro things. And so it's kind of a reality check. And for me, I've always thought just to enjoy the moment rather than just get too locked in to what you're trying to do and things like that. At that level, in that age, for sure. Obviously now, when going to the Australian Open in a couple weeks, it's like, you belong here. You've done the work. You should be able to belong and things like that. But also still enjoying the moment and enjoying what you've accomplished thus far. I think a lot of the time you're always looking to the next big thing, and I think for me it was just sitting there and appreciating it. Even sitting in the crowd in the stands, watching some of those types of players play and talk to my dad was with me, and we had a routine. We went to a chain burger wing joint there, and we did that when I made the semis, and we ate that the entire week. And I remember thinking, looking back, it's like, how the heck did we do that when, now I have a pretty strict diet, more or less. And it's like, I was eating burgers and wings before matches against guys that were, top in the juniors in the world. And it was pretty funny to see, but I think just more or less enjoying everything that you're doing and not getting too far out of sight of everything. Yeah,
that's awesome. And let's talk a little bit about what kind of like your coaching dynamic was like when you were a junior. You mentioned you got involved with the USTA. Before that, what was your coaching situation?
So I had my childhood coach, Anthony Stewart. I've been with him, I guess, since I was 2 years old. I've been talking to him even, weekly to date, basically. I'll go back to my hometown Spartanburg and I'll say hello. We'll probably even do a little lesson or whatever and look at my strokes, and, he'll give me some pointers and things. Obviously, he's based in Spartanburg area, so he doesn't really travel with me. But, I think I'm a firm believer in always appreciating the people that got you along the way. And I think his opinion still matters and it's still valued. And, and then I obviously, at some stage felt like I needed a coach that had more or less been in that arena, in the high level junior, high level pro stuff to help you develop your game and take it to the next level more or less. And Kelly was that guy for me. Kelly Jones at the University of Furman. Obviously, he was number 1 in the world in doubles and top 80 or 90 in the world in singles. And so he brought another element to my tennis game. And then from there, we went to Florida for Brian Shelton and things. So I haven't had that many coaches along the way, but I've had very important and influential people and coaches in my career to get me and to be the player I am today.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think that dynamic, especially with junior players and the relationship they have with their coaches, is huge, especially for long-term development. So kind of interesting to hear that you've stuck really with a few guys your whole career.
Yeah, no, for sure.
And then let's talk a little bit about when you were in juniors. You're starting to be 15, 16, 17. I know you mentioned that there was that debate of should I go straight to the pros, should I play in college? What ended up being the reason why you chose the college route?
I think unless you're really dominating the lower level pro stuff, you probably should go at least for a year. I think, obviously you can guarantee yourself an education after you turn pro, and I think that's important. Obviously there's, injuries, unfortunately, but I think more or less it was the fact that I wasn't mentally and physically there. I think I needed to improve in a lot of aspects, and I think you could have got beaten up at that level and not really improved your game, and then you come to a standstill, and it's a lot tougher from there. So I think for me, I didn't know how many years I was going to be in school. I didn't think I was going to go for all 4. I was hoping to go for 1 and get in and out and go and chase the dream. But, each year we reevaluated, my parents and Kelly and things like that. And then, I think at the end of year 3 or the middle way through year 3, I decided like my time was ready. I was doing very well in the college. And that was the other thing, is like I wanted to dominate college tennis before. And I don't know if I dominated by winning a national championship or a individual championship or anything. We didn't get to play my last year because of COVID, but I got to top 3 in the country there, and I was playing number 1 for Florida and stuff, and I was having some good wins, and I felt there that I was ready to go, and I was, I'd won a future or 2 during that semester, and I thought physically and mentally I was motivated and excited for the opportunity, and then we made the decision.
I love that. And before you chose Florida, what was the recruiting process like for you? Were you considering other schools, or talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I was telling them earlier, it was funny because basically my dad is very on top of things, very, professional in a lot of these types of things. And so he had a sheet of every single school that had reached out to me, whether it was a community college, whether it was a JUCO, whether it was a D1, D2, D3, and there must have been, 70, 80 schools that he had written out. And basically Kelly, we handed the list over to Kelly and said, Kelly, look at the list and tell me what you think. And basically he made an X through every school with a few asterisks by some of them, and then a double circle around Florida. And I remember saying, okay, thanks, Kelly, for your, for the information. And my dad had said the same. And we walked and got in the car and drove home. And it was about a 45-minute drive from Greenville to Spartanburg. And my dad sat in the car and he said, so what do you think? And I said, what do you mean what I think? And he goes, well, what do you think about the school? And I said, well, isn't it obvious? And he's like, isn't it obvious I'm going to Florida? And he goes, yeah, I suppose so. So that's just the level of trust that we had in Kelly. And the reason was because of Brian Shelton. And that was what we thought was the next way to get me to the next level, was a good coach that had been at that level, that had seen that level. And we didn't even take a visit. We didn't visit other schools. We didn't do anything. We basically committed to Florida without taking a visit on campus. After we committed verbally or whatever, we did go and see it just because we were in the area and they wanted us to come check it out. But for me, it was a no-brainer. And the best decision I made choosing a school for sure.
Yeah, it's really interesting actually that you did it without, like, kind of blind almost,
Yeah.
and clearly it paid off well. What was that transition like? You talked about a little bit, kind of what your mindset was like going into Florida. You wanted to be dominant. What was that transition period for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, it was learning about being on a team. You know, I had more or less been on a team aspect with the USTA, and we were traveling around with 2 coaches and about 5 to 7 players most times, 20, 30 weeks of the year, going to all the big junior events and some futures and things. So I kind of knew what it felt like to be on a team, and, you know, obviously you're competing against those guys at the end of the day, and it's not really, you're not, you know, but we were the USTA and the USA group, so we had each other's backs, and we were always going to dinners and things like that, so I kind of knew what it felt like to be on a team. But I guess freshman year I wanted to learn how to work well with a group of guys, because obviously tennis is a very individual and more or less selfish sport, and, you know, I kind of wanted to see, you know, how I worked on a team and things. And then the next year I was a captain, so I wanted to learn how to, you know, lead a team. And then after year 3 was when we decided to leave. And yeah, I think it was a great experience for me to kind of go from that, you know, freshman to being on the team, learning how to work well with players and, you know, helping each other and things like that, to then leading a team. And then to after year 3 was ready to attack it myself.
Yeah, and then like you said, you ended up being very successful, top 10 finishes, maybe it was top 5 finish, I believe. And how much of that do you attribute to the atmosphere that you were in, where you're competing against and with teammates every day, versus when you're a junior and you're kind of by yourself?
Yeah, I think it brings up a lot of uncomfortable feelings and uncomfortable things you have to go through. And I think to be a very successful tennis player and even athlete, you have to become, you know, comfortable being uncomfortable. And I think that's what the college tennis brought to me tenfold. I think it, you know, you're constantly competing for a lineup spot. You're constantly competing against other teams. You're constantly competing on the track or in the gym. You know, and then on top of that, you're going to school, and there's, you know, the social life. I think, you know, you're constantly in those uncomfortable situations, and to be able to deal with those while still being in a very controlled environment was a very big learning curve for me to go to the pros. I think, you know, you have people stringing your rackets, you have people booking your flights, you have people telling you where you need to be when you need to be there, but also still in an uncomfortable environment because you're competing as people. You up late night doing some studying at times, you know, you're trying to balance your social life and line up spots, and also being a captain and leading a team, to then all of a sudden you're basically dropped off via a plane and said, to your own resources, figure it out. And yeah, so at the beginning of my professional career, I was told by a coach or two that you need to make yourself uncomfortable and see what you do, and come back when you're top 400 or 500 in the world. And I went, you know, 4 weeks to Tunisia, 4 weeks to India, 3 weeks to Egypt by myself. Never been to any places like that ever.
Wow, and that's right out of college, right?
Out of college, we had COVID, and then I went to a couple in the Dominican at the end of 2020, and then the beginning of 2021. My first events were in Tunisia. I was in Tunisia, then India, then Egypt.
Wow, and what's that like, traveling around by yourself and competing at a high level? You know, in unknown environments.
It's a culture shock, more or less. You know, you've never had those types of foods. You've never been around those types of people. You don't speak the language. You know, there's so many different variables, and, you know, it's sink or swim. And I think that's kind of where you really learn how to manage yourself, how to manage your emotions, how to manage your game, and things like that. And if you don't have those types of experiences, I don't think you can grow to the next level. I think if you have it all handed to you and spoon-fed to you, it's going to be a lot tougher when you get down the line and things like that. And I think it's definitely made me the player and person I am today, to where you do face an uncomfortable situation. It's not as uncomfortable as it once was, potentially, and things like that. So since then, obviously, I have a coach now that travels me full-time, and I've had a physio that comes to tournaments every once in a while, and have an agent and things like this. But I think to put yourself in those types of environments is a really good learning curve improving yourself.
Yeah, no, I think that's really cool, and a good point that I think people can take away is that a lot of times those jumps in your ability level, in your mental toughness levels, only come from the uncomfortable situations.
Yeah,
you know?
no, exactly.
And then I'd love to hear a little bit about how your nutrition has changed over time. You mentioned when you're at Kalamazoo, you're eating burgers and wings. How's that adjusted now that you're on the pro circuit and everything?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's obviously, I wouldn't say I'm ridiculously strict, like gluten-free or anything like this, but, I am trying to, eat a decent amount of protein to, carb to, vegetable ratio, whatever, may say. But it is tough as well still because you're on the road and you're in different environments and things. It's not like you can just go to the local Publix and buy your own ingredients and cook it on your own stove or whatever. So you kind of have to do a little bit of research and do a little bit of poking around. But, I like, the standard breakfast, lunch and dinners is, more or less, eggs for breakfast, meats and things for dinner and carbs for sometimes before matches, if it's going to be a match in the early afternoon or whatever. But I think, it's all about the preparation. It's if you have, a match at 4 p.m., what are you eating before and how are you fueling your body to do that? And I think that's the other thing is at college, you had your meals planned, ordered, prepared, everything, and you just had to show up and sit in the chair and put the food in your mouth. It wasn't, anything else. But there are times where I've been in, India, for example, and the person doesn't understand what I'm trying to ask them for, and it's nothing what I ordered and nothing what I assumed that was going to come, and you have to kind of improvise on the spot, and at the end of the day, no one really cares because it's you versus them. So, I think it's a very good experience to have.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. And then what if Oliver Crawford's having a cheat meal? What's Oliver Crawford eating?
I have a bunch of desserts. I can eat a bunch of different sugary foods and things that cakes, cookies, whatever, milkshakes, anything. I can more or less eat. Mostly, I would say sweets, more so than even a meal.
Okay, I like that. I got a little sweet tooth myself, so that's cool. And then how about, we talked nutrition side, how about the physio side, your physical development, training, and those sort of things? How's that evolved now that you're on the pro tour?
I've had multiple different guys that have helped me with the physical side. I have a physio that I've been with for many years, Greg Bosch. He's based in Charleston, South Carolina, where I'm more or less based as well. And he's taken my game to another level flexibility-wise, and I think that's very important. I think, obviously, if you're not healthy and you're not able to perform it the best way, then you're not going to be your best self. So I think I've taken that since college in the juniors to another level. Because you're playing 30, 35 weeks of the year, and if you're not healthy, then it's impossible to do it. And then from the physical side, from the strength training and conditioning stuff, I've had multiple people, throughout my career. Justin Russ has recently been doing some of my stuff, and the same thing with Chris May's done a lot of my stuff as of late, since I turned pro. And I think just kind of hearing a bunch of different people's perspective and getting different training blocks, and then you start to find what you like and what you think works well, I think is the biggest thing. I think taking ownership of your career, ownership of the do's and the don'ts and the things, everyone's different. Some people like to lift more, some people like to do more conditioning. So I think I'm kind of trying to find a balance as to what works best for me in off seasons and then on the road as well. With still putting yourself in those things where you're uncomfortable with putting the workouts you don't like doing, There's obviously things I don't like doing, but I know are good for me, so I'm just going to suck it up and do it. But yeah, I think you just got to try and find that balance with what works best for you.
100%. And I think it's interesting too, because tennis is sort of a year-round sport. Yeah. So you have to maintain your physical fitness levels, your recovery, all that in between these big tournaments, which I imagine you have to do a lot of preparation and plan things out. Is that something that you do at the beginning of every year, kind of sit down and plan out the whole thing, or is it just in chunks?
In chunks, more or less, because, you never know how your body's going to react to different things. You don't know how well you're going to do. So, I have a, more or less a schedule that is temporary for the next couple months, but who knows? If you win a few extra matches and you make a few extra points and do very well, you play a different tournament, or if you're not doing so well, you go down a different level. So I think that's the other thing, is being able to adapt on the fly, being flexible with your schedule. There's been times where I thought I was going to go to one continent, and a week before I choose and change the complete location, or, we think we're going to go to a tournament and we end up pulling out the day before we're supposed to fly to that one and go somewhere else. So, or go home and get rest, or whatever it may be. But yeah, I think listening to your body and understanding where you are and what your goals are and what you're trying to achieve, and then take it from there. But I think if you lock yourself into a full year-long schedule and are adamant on doing this, and this, I don't think it's very healthy. But also you have to push yourself and play tournaments for sure when you're uncomfortable or when you're tired or banged up and things like that. But you have to be, I guess, a good judge of that.
Yeah, definitely. I think that leaving that wiggle room to see how your body feels and for the flexibility with the travel is probably crucial. Yeah, how about on the mental health side of things? Is there anything that you do to get your mind right? I know some people do yoga, some people just go on a walk, some people enjoy hanging out with their friends and family. What do you do to get your mind right?
Yeah, no, I definitely struggle with some mental health things during my career thus far. I think I am not better than I'm definitely better than I was. I wouldn't say I'm fully fixed, because I don't think that's ever the case, but it became a lot my very first year, and I dealt with some serious anxiety, different things, and to try and figure out and learn why and what is going on and how do I solve it, or how do I make it, more manageable, was a big thing. I've talked to Larry Lauer at the USTA, has been a guy that I've, talked to pretty regularly, weekly, I would say, about my feelings and things like that. But I definitely think having a psychiatrist or a mental coach, if you will, is someone that can definitely, help you. And it's, the mental side is obviously a huge part of the game.
Yeah, no, that's really cool to see somebody in your position be vulnerable and say that you're going through that and that you're taking active steps to kind of improve that part of your game and your life, really. So yeah. I appreciate that. How about in your travels, what has been the favorite place that you've gotten to play tennis?
That's a loaded question. See, people ask me that all the time, and I think I like places for different reasons. I think I've been to India multiple times, and I think the people there are the best people by far in the world. I think they have so little but are still willing to give so much. I've had little kids come up to me and buy me a water when I'm thirsty after a match with probably the rest of the money they have in their pocket, or we've lost a wallet before and the wallet has as much money as the taxi driver is going to make in maybe a month, and still brings it back with every penny in it. So I think the people there are unbelievable. And then I guess, I love the food as well. I think the food is unbelievable. I love Indian food. It's probably one of my favorite foods. And then you obviously have higher end European countries, like Switzerland, Austria. I love the Alps. I love the views. I think it's, unbelievable. I've been a bunch of places in South America. I love Chile. I think that's a very nice country, and Brazil as well. The food there is amazing, and things. So I love to travel. I love to see the world. I think I appreciate every place I've ever been for different reasons. But yeah, I guess those would be a few of the.
That's very cool. I've never been to India, so it sounds like that's somewhere I need to get on the map.
Yeah, for sure.
And then let's before we wrap it up and let you get on the court, let's talk about the equipment that you're going to be using in the 2024 season. Recently made a racket string change. Talk a little bit about what that transition was like, and then maybe what your relationship with equipment has been thus far in your career.
Yeah, no, I'm obviously switched the Diadem Elevate V3. Is the racket I'm going to play with, and then the Black Solstice 16 gauge is the string I'm going to play with. I've played with a couple rackets in my past. I've played with a Babolat Pure Control and a Head Radical, the two rackets in the past. And I think this racket is a good in-between mix of the two rackets. I think, it's the same string pattern as the Babolat, and then it's the same weight as the Head racket. So I think it kind of, implements both of my last two rackets, which I guess obviously were rackets I did really like. with also the string. I used to play with the Solinko string. I feel like this one gives me a bit more pop, if you will, and is able to, stay on the strings longer and elevate and use a little bit more spin and pull the ball off the court. So yeah, I'm really pleased with everything. Diadem's been, second to none, working with me on sending me all the different types of strings and giving me information and feedback on things that I would or wouldn't like and why. So yeah, and I think the other thing that I really like about Diadem is it's an up and coming tennis brand. Obviously, they're very, sought out in the pickleball arena. But I think working with a company that is a bit smaller, that you can, I can collab my brand with their brand and see if we can have some real success together, I think for me is also one of the main reasons I chose a company like Diadem. So yeah.
I think everybody here at our HQ is excited to track all your success next year. And I think you briefly mentioned it's all starting with Australia, right?
Yeah. Start in Melbourne for sure.
And then, so you're going out in the end of January, and that's what?
Beginning of January. So I fly actually the 29th of December. I get there the 31st, and then we have about 8 days of preparation, and then we play Australia.
That's exciting, man. We're going to be tuning in for that for sure. Really appreciative that you took the time to sit with us today, learn a little bit more about your game, your career, and all that. And I hope everybody at home was able to take some of what you had to say and maybe apply it to their training regimen. So thanks so much, Oliver.
Appreciate it.
We'll be back with more courtside sessions all season, so make sure you guys tune in. I'm Diadem Kev, signing off.